So feel free to continue your pie discussion. And if everyone's good, we're going to go ahead and get started. You're being recorded so that we can share this afterwards, which isn't to make you nervous. It's just to be transparent because there's some folks that couldn't make it and definitely want to hear this session. So let me go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Kim Finney, pronouns she, her, and along with my colleague, Kathy Moxon, who will be joining us in a little bit, we are the co-founders of Rural Youth Catalyst. We're thrilled to welcome you to our 2024 Rural Learning Community Series. We created this series. It grows out of work from many, many years ago, of which some of you we were lucky enough we've all gotten to be together for a long time, and some of you are brand new to this. But essentially, we created this to be for us to support and provide resources for anyone that is working with rural young people or working in different ways to support rural young people or just simply loves rural young people. And in particular, we try to have this be a focus for adolescent and that young adult and transitioning to adulthood space. Anyone is welcome to join, but it's particularly with that in mind and how we bring information and resources that might not normally be available or easily available to those of you that are working in that space, particularly in that rural space. For those of you that are also new, this is like informal. Our fantastic presenters, facilitators today definitely have an agenda plan, but just to be clear, this is meant to be conversational. This is meant to be in that spirit of ask questions. Our goal is to share information and resources and spark ideas and thinking and introduce you to partners. The last thing we mean to do is ever gatekeep. So one, you all get to just on this call alone and from these introductions, meet people you might not know, and you get to learn from the facilitators themselves. In other words, feel free to raise your hand at any point, to drop things into chat. We don't get the luxury of all being in a room face to face together right now, but we kind of like to try to use the same rules or suggestions as best we can on Zoom, which is, make sure you're getting the information you need, make sure you're asking for information to be clarified. Keep yourself comfortable, right? Hydrate, stretch, no one's going to take offense at that. If it's possible, throughout, if you can try to keep your camera on some, that's great. And I say that simply as someone that's had to facilitate on Zoom a lot, because it's really hard when you have no idea, when you're just looking at blank screens. That said, we recognize you have young people coming in and out of your program in your offices or spaces. We totally get that. And we also get that you may want to eat or whatever, you have life. So we're not trying to invade your space, but just to say it's so helpful to see any kind of facial expression, reaction, any of that. And when possible, if you can just keep your mic muted. But again, all of that was not meant to add stress to your life, to just sort of try to make it as participatory as possible. Anyone that needs captions on, you should be able to turn them on. If you're not, if you can bring that to my attention right away, I'll try to get that addressed. Let's see. So the other, as we lead into this conversation, the other thing, some of you, like I said, have been with us all along and are real familiar with, why this topic and this conversation. But for some of you, it's your first time. And one of the first things we just wanted to quickly say as we introduce this is that all of our work at Rural Youth Catalyst connects to building well-being, and particularly the collective well-being of rural young people. And we're constantly thinking about each piece of work that we're doing and partnerships that we're doing and collaborations and conversations, all the things, and how we can push for systems change across policy and practice. Our next session in June will be sharing the hot off the press Rural Youth Wellbeing Framework that is 9 domains, and we'll be sharing more about that. Some of you have been part of making that framework all along, and so you'll also be hearing from some of those folks next time. But in particular, we wanted to single out that one of the domains that we see collectively, this isn't our unique epiphany, right? This isn't just Rural Youth Catalyst. This is what we all know. But one of those domains is community and civic life that contributes to the well-being of rural and Native young people. And we know that when young people have the opportunity to learn and lead in meaningful ways that contribute to their communities, it doesn't just build their immediate sense of belonging or belonging over time. It doesn't just increase their sense of well-being, but it also increases the likelihood that they will have a lifetime of civic engagement and deep participation in their communities. We also know that it actually increases the likelihood that those young people will either remain or return to their rural communities or another rural community. So we know that it's not just that these conversations aren't just this short-term investment in this moment, but this is actually a long-term investment. Dare we say, not just in democracy, but in our democracy is tied to our collective well-being, right? So all of us sitting here on Zoom, our well-being is inextricably linked to the levels of belonging in community and civic engagement of our young people. So, but we also know that rural young people don't have the same opportunities to engage and learn as many of their urban and suburban counterparts. And so we've been really, really fortunate to have the brilliant folks from Circle partnering with us and be part of our policy working group for over the last couple of years. And their research, so you've already been learning about that earlier this year, their research on youth civic engagement, and particularly their framework, their Growing Voters framework, that is helping organizations build both the civic learning and civic engagement skills of young people, and to help organizations build those ecosystems within their communities across 3 elements in that framework: access and exposure, support and culture. And then in particular, what you all know from earlier in 2023 is many of you participated in a learning community that was taking that framework and focusing it on rural. And once I pass the baton to Zoe and Davis, I will drop into chat the brief that came out of that first piece of work. And now it is in phase 2, of which some of you on this call are part of, and some of you are joining this conversation. So we were already in the middle of all this work when we had the great fortune of having Zoe and Davis from Citizens University that lead the civic youth collaboratory work and the Citizen Redefined work drop into our emails. And so we started a conversation, and we know that they're also doing work with Circle. And the more in particular we listened and were in conversation with the 2 of them around this piece of work and their project Citizen Redefined, the more interested we got in bringing this and sharing it with all of you. But also the fact that they are really committed and really on fire about actually partnering and bringing this work to rural communities and to rural young people. So we thought that we would start with inviting them to give you an introduction to it all, a sense of an overview, right? Start the conversation. The work goes much deeper and wide and deep, right? And includes an in-person learning community. And we are super interested in exploring that with them and in how this work complements the work being done with Circle, and how, and particularly how they are thinking about bringing resources and tools to adults that are providing support to young people and to help young people develop those underlying skills. So I am going to try to get this right. And so I'm really, really excited to introduce Davis and Dava. Did I do it? I did it. I'm really bad at name pronunciation, as some of you know. And Davis is the program manager for Citizen Redefined. And Zoe Kane Belia, did I get it? Good, thank you.
Good.
Is the program director and curriculum design, both of them with Citizens University, both of them on fire about this work and young people. So I'm about to turn it over to them. As we go about this conversation and as they share and lead you through the overview, as well as giving you a sample of some hands-on activities you can do with your young people that we thought might be most immediate and like you could walk out the door and think about and use. We also are asking you, as always, to be thoughtful, to be curious, to be open, right? And in the best of ways, to bring your critical thinking. As you listen to all of this and what they're sharing, what we all want to know is, can you imagine this, what you're learning, with the young people that you're serving? So particularly that opportunity youth, out of school space, transitioning to adulthood. And what would we need to shift? If you're like, I can imagine it, but here's what I would want to see, or here's how we might want to do it differently. And here's what I think might get lost in a rural context. Or you're also walking across a lot of regions and geography and identities. And we know well that the work of rural is race and geography and place are inextricably tied. So as you listen to all of this, what have we also missed, and what would need to get added in, or what is like bullseye, right? So we want to hear all of it, and throughout the piece, but also afterwards. We look forward to, this is just the start of conversation and collaboration with Davis and Zoe. So Davis and Zoe, thank you so very, very much for being with us. And without further ado, I turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kim. And everyone, really just hugely grateful to get the opportunity to connect with you all today. Davis and I have been working together on this program, Citizen Redefined, together for a couple of years, and I've been working on Citizen Redefined since we started piloting it in 2021. And so it is like both a fairly new program and also a program that we've had the opportunity to really test and co-design based on the responses of educators who have already experienced it. And we're really excited about the ways in which we can share it with new folks, folks in new areas, and really have the orientation about it of, as Kim was saying, how can we bring the pieces of Citizen Redefined that are most useful to you, and how can we be sort of flexible, adaptive, and emergent about what the program or the training experience needs to look like in order for it to serve you and the young people that you work with the best that it can. That being said, I am really right now in this moment going to set the intention to not rush. And because I think what we would love to do today is to sort of give you a taste, not only of what Citizen Redefined is or what we're up to at Citizen University, but I think almost more importantly, how we think about experiences like this unfolding, and like how we want it to feel for educators who join us for in-person training, and how we want civic learning to feel for young people. And so I'm going to say right now, if we don't get to everything on my plan, that's just going to be okay. And I'm going to spend the time demonstrating how we want this experience to be, just as much as trying to give you a lot of information about the content and the what of it as well. So I think we will do both, but just you are all my witness of me setting that intention right now. I'll just say a quick word of introduction about myself, which is that I live in Ashland, Oregon. I saw maybe another Oregon person on here, which is right down at the bottom of the state. Even my coworkers sometimes are like, you live in Portland, right? And I do not, importantly to me. And I've been with Citizen University for about 7 years. I come from an arts education background, so I do a lot of thinking about how do we use sort of all of the senses and a sense of creativity and play and joy to help make learning experiences more sticky for young people and for adults. That's my background. And I would love it, Davis, if you just want to introduce yourself really quickly, and then I'll get the screen share up and running and we'll hit the road.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Davis Indava, and I have been working on this program for a few years with Zoe. It's been amazing and super powerful. I live up in Seattle, Washington, and I am Indigenous. I'm Hopi and Putupacha, and I'm also white. And so it's been really beautiful to get to be part of this civic rite of passage building with Citizen Redefined and bringing in the elements of myself that feel really important, which are deep connection to my community and to nature and to histories of place, and having that inform maybe in America that we can grow into and be in, that it hasn't ever been, but I have a hope that it can be. And I've been really grateful to be a part of this program and to co-facilitate in this, to be able to bring that into places that I didn't get when I was younger. So thank you all for being here, and I'm excited for this workshop.
Cool. Let's do it. Okay. So bing, 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 Citizen Redefined, let's go. I think we've talked a lot about the purpose of today. We're going to introduce our org. We're going to introduce this specific program that Citizen University offers, and we're going to experience pieces of the curriculum together. We got the chance to really see in the chat the pies that are meaningful to your heart, and I'm excited about that. I'm so grateful that we spent the time on introductions at the top. And I would like to offer one more way for us to continue to build the texture, sort of the orchard, if you will, of who is here, who is this group, what is this collection of people who are here right now in this moment and who may never be exactly together in this way ever again. We use a specific chat game. I'll call it a game for today. We use a specific chat game at Citizen University, which is called a chat waterfall, which means that you're going to follow this prompt, but you're going to put your response into the chat and you're not going to hit send. And then I'll give us a countdown. We'll all hit send together and we'll see like all of the things come into the chat at once. It gives us a little bit more spaciousness to like make the decision of what we want to put in the chat. And then we get to experience it all together. And we're going to use this structure, this little game again later on. So now it's kind of a practice. If you mess it up right now, it's okay. But what we're going to put in the chat right now is a picture of a tree that grows near you. So here's one way that you could do this. I'll show you. You could go to your Google and you could choose the tree that you want to share with a group. I just looked out my window and I can see a pear tree blooming. And so I said, I'm going to pick pear tree. You can use your right click button to copy the image. And then when you go into your chat, you should be able to just right click again and hit paste. And the picture should pop into the chat on Zoom. Zoom is doing this for us these days. So hopefully this is like a pretty easy ask. Bonus points if you can put an actual photo of an actual tree that is actually near you, but Google image search is very adequate. And we're going to take about 30 seconds to try to do this before I give us the countdown to press send. If you're having a technical difficulty, just come off chat And I mean, come off mute and chat with me about it with your words if you need help. um, okay, I see people's little eyes moving around, which is usually a good sign that the task is being accomplished. We'll take about 10 more seconds before we press send. Okay. If you need more time, give me a big wave on your screen. Okay, here we go. So on the count of 3, we're going to press send and see what trees are near the people in this group. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Beautiful. We've got a lot of evergreens. Gorgeous. Oh, I feel like some of these might be a picture of your actual yard or zone. Gorgeous. Wow, so beautiful. I love to see all the different colors. Some people have chose fall leaves. Awesome. Love that so much. Okay, thanks everybody. Now we have a little bit of a better sense of the reach of where people are coming from. And I really appreciate you for setting the stage like that. Magnolia tree, thank you so much for sharing that, bringing the name of that tree into our space as well. I really appreciate that. Okay, so knowing that we're all coming from all these different places and that we're coming together to talk about this thing of Citizen University and Citizen Redefined, I would like to just, by way of introducing our organization, say that at CU, we believe that a civic awakening is underway in the United States. And we see our role as speeding it up. So we're working to spread deeper understanding about what citizenship can be, to spread a belief that democracy matters, and to help people commit to also believing that it matters and commit to also speeding up this civic revival. Because of this, we work with people who we call civic catalysts. So that's what we would see all of you as civic catalysts, people who are interested in speeding up culture change in your own area in the ways that are really adapted and informed by what the people around you need most. People like you who want sharper skills, deeper relationships to help bridge divides, to build civic faith, and more systems, tools, ideas to help you do the work you're already doing better, or in broader ways or in deeper ways with students, with families, with communities all across the country. At CU, our values are trust, ingenuity, equity, collaboration, purpose, responsibility, and in my mind, very importantly, spirit. This is sort of what I was talking about at the top of, like, I'm not going to rush because the way is important to me. For us, you know, Citizen Redefined particularly, but all of our programs are an expression not only of the ideas we think are important to help strengthen civic life, but the feelings and the ways of being that we think will make those ideas real. And so ritual is really important to us. Joy is really important to us, and gathering together to talk about ideas in community and in relationship is really important to us. Let's do one more little demonstration of what we mean when we say spirit as a way of opening into Davis's deeper dive into what CU is up to. So I want everybody right now to take your hands and rub them together for a moment. So when we think about ritual at Citizen University, a lot of what we think about is metaphor, physical metaphor. So how can we use more than our mind to think about and internalize and experience ideas? So right now what you're making is just a little bit of heat. You're sort of making a little spark by rubbing one palm against the other. You didn't get any tools. You didn't need anything except yourself. You're just doing one little action that's easy to accomplish, and you're building a little bit of heat, a little bit of warmth between your two palms. Now take a moment, open your hands, and let your heat radiate towards your own self. Just notice, without anything else, with just you and what was already inside of you, the heat that you've been able to generate. Now take a big breath in and reach your hands outside your Zoom screen. Big breath in. and send a little bit of that energy, those sparkles, that little bit of warmth to the people on the other two Zoom screens on either side of you. Just send it to them energetically, a little bit of that heat, that thing that you have inside of you, that spark. Share it with them just for a moment. Take another big breath in and let it go. Beautiful. Thank you. So here we are, scattered all across the country, looking at all different types of trees, but also together, puzzling through ideas and actions and how we can share our energy, our commitment, our questions, our curiosities with each other by choosing to be together as we continue to puzzle through these ideas and actions. And trying to find as many ways as we can to support emerging leaders as they create the world that they want to live in, because that's what really matters at the end of the day. So I'm going to turn it over to Davis to give a little bit more information about what CU is up to, and then I'll come back to talk about Citizen Redefined and take us into our next activities.
Thank you, Zoe. To start to talk about what CU is, it's really imperative to look all the way back to about 10 years ago, which is when CU started. I invite you to just take a moment and maybe close your eyes or soften your gaze and just imagine yourself 10 years ago. That was 2014. Where were you? What were you doing? Were you in school? Were you in this job? Were you somewhere else? Who did you have relationships with? What was happening in the world at that point? What was really important to you? Just think back to 10 years ago. If your eyes are closed, I invite you to open them back up and look at this slide. And in the past 10 years, all of these things have happened in our country, and also so many more things have happened in our country. But these are some of the big prominent pieces that felt important to kind of pull out. And I invite you to just look over these, let your eyes wash over these and notice like what in your body happens when you see all these images. What do you remember? Where were you? Who were you in these moments? In each of these situations that are pictured right here, regular people like you and me and the youth catalysts you support and your colleagues and all the people in your community, regular people have noticed needs and realized that they are being called to do something about them. These are groups of citizens that have come together to turn ideas, to turn the tides, because they believed it was necessary and that it might actually just be possible. Because they had a sense of like internal possibility, that fire, that heat that Zoe was just asking us to talk about, that sense of responsibility and a kind of civic faith that doing something really mattered. I invite you to pause for a moment and think about a moment that you've learned in history or experienced in your life that created a feeling of civic faith within you, something that made you feel like something different was possible and that maybe you had a responsibility to make it happen in the world, whether it was small or big. What is a moment in you in the past life of yours that created that moment of civic faith? Something that sparked you to join up maybe this powerful group of people to help you stay committed to circulating civic service from coast to coast. Once you have that, I invite you to open up your chat box and we'll be doing another chat waterfall. And I'll give you about 30 seconds to write and wait for my signal before you press enter. Just write about what historical movement or personal experience strengthened or does currently strengthen your civic faith. I'll give you a couple seconds. All right. Wave your hand at me if you need more time. All right, let's go. 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's look through. I invite you to take a moment to look back through and see what other people said. Working on thesis after January 6th, rural high school, being a rural high school teacher, voting every time. Civil rights movement, being a part of the Biden-Harris campaign. These are all really powerful pieces. And I'm sure, I know for me, I can think of many things throughout my life that had me stir up this sense of responsibility and civic faith in my life that doing something really mattered. And that I had the power and the responsibility to do something about it. And through the years, as Americans, we've all felt a profound mix of this. At least in my life, in my family, in my awareness, there's been a profound mix of possibility and devastation in so many ways in America. And this program and our entire work at Citizen University is grounded in our shared context as Americans, in the idea that yes, America is certainly a disappointment, but it is a disappointment because we also have hope. It is also a hope. So about 10 years ago, we just talked about our own bodies and our own selves and the things that stirred our civic faith. And about 10 years ago, Eric Liu and Janae Hain founded Citizen University because they felt a sense of deep civic need and faith that doing something mattered within their community. And can you go to the next one? And they founded it with this center point, this piece of important grounding for themselves. And that is that their task is to counter a culture of hyper-individualism, cynicism, and powerlessness, because they saw all of that in our communities, with one of powerful and responsible citizenship. And citizenship meaning something that isn't just based on your status or your paperwork or anything, but citizenship, reclaiming that word is like, what does it mean to have our roots in this ground? What does it mean to have our feet on this earth and to be connected to our communities and to be holding out our hands for each other and to be stepping towards and leaning into what does it mean to have a powerful community, leaning into how do I share my gifts to create an America that maybe has never been, but I hope that someday it will be. Our core beliefs in this is that we have a democracy and we can't take it for granted. Democracy is a way that we all can step in and show up and create a community and an ecosystem, I guess, that we can grow together, and that it is something that is a garden. We all need to move in and grow in and give nutrients to it so that it can show up for us deeply. A strong democracy requires strong citizens, requires us to feel supported and loved and deeply nourished in our communities and to nourish other people in our communities, that we're all better off when we're all better off. And to be in a strong democracy, we all need to, with strength, move towards the America that we see and know is possible. That culture determines whether democracy thrives. We can change all the rules or the titles or the structures of things in the world. We could do that, and that's powerful too. And if our culture is something that is different from that, then culture is the thing that really drives what actually happens. And so that if we are strong citizens and we're creating the culture that we're really excited about, then that is really what will shift these structures in the long term and keep them that way. And that we need each other, to show up. I can't do this alone. I know that you all are in communities and schools and all these things, and we can't do these tasks all alone. It's really hard. And that also includes America. We can't do America alone. We need each other. And we need each other to show up. And that means something different to every single person. Everyone can show up in their own way, and that's super powerful. But to show up and to lean in is what we need. This program brings us into relationship with you all. And what we're doing right now is called Citizen Redefined. It's a vision for a new rite of passage experience that welcomes American teens into their civic adulthood. And I'll turn it over to Zoe to zoom us into what that program is a little bit more closely before we get a little bit of practice.
Thanks, Davis. So I'm going to talk a tiny bit more, and then we're going to do some stuff, but a tiny bit more talking just to get us grounded in the context of the activities that we're going to get into together. So Citizen Redefined is one of our 4 core programs, and it is a set of ideas and activities designed to help folks who already work with young people or who already have a sense of what youth in their community need do that work with even more ideas and support. So really thinking about, what do adults who already serve young people and communities need in order to bring more ideas about civic engagement, strengthening democracy, being a strong citizen, and sticking together. We ask in this program, we ask the central question: what does it mean to be an American citizen? And Davis talked about this a little bit already, but we're really trying to shift this framing of citizen from like big C citizen to little c citizen. What does it mean to be a person who chooses to show up for the people around them? What does it mean to be a person who has their eyes and ears open for where they can be of use? What does it mean to be a person who is committed not to fulfilling their service requirements so that they can look good on an application, but really to viewing service as a way of life. We believe that everyone who lives and works and cries and deserves to thrive on this land that we call America is part of writing the story of the future. And our team from Citizen University really wants to create a container where young people can get curious about exactly this idea of like, what do I, as a young person, want to become in order to be a part of my community? What does my community mean to me? So we really see Citizen Redefined as like a place to do that wondering. It's not Citizen Redefined by Citizen University or like defined by Zoe and Davis, and we'll come and tell you what we think. It's really Citizen Redefined by Kim and by Carla and by each of the young people. It's like Citizen Redefined by the people who experience the curriculum themselves. The curriculum is built around an arc of civic skills. So a lot of civics education programs, sort of action civics programs, if you're familiar with those, are centered around a project. And so much skills learning emerges from that project. And I think that that's like, we have a program like that. It's called the Youth Collaboratory, but we really see Citizen Redefined as a complement to that type of civic learning, where we really actually want to center on the skills and call them out and tease them apart so that young people can have a little bit more of an awareness of their development and move through that skills development with intention. So you can see here the arc of civic skills from things like deep listening, which we'll experience today, critical thinking, which we'll experience if we have time, navigating conflict through sessions that help us to think about, what does America mean to me? What does morality look and feel like based on my experiences and my values? How do I relate to power? And then we think about putting all of this learning back together, doing some activities that help us to explore collaboration, service, and celebrating as a major civic skill at the end. As Davis mentioned earlier, the program is designed around the idea of a civic rite of passage. And so because of that, we move through the 3 main phases of a rite of passage, which are isolation. So in the beginning, we're really trying to separate, how do I know myself, as opposed to just the things that I have heard from my parents or the people who are important to me. Like, how can I really separate out myself and get to know myself better? Then we think about this transformation phase as getting to know your citizen self, each young person getting to know their citizen self. So like, okay, if I can figure out who I am, then how do I start to figure out who I want to be in relationship to others? And then at the end, integration. So figuring out how to put those two things together in a way that is really like self-determined, putting each young person in the driver's seat of defining themselves, defining how they want to be as a citizen, and then figuring out how to do that in a committed way. I mentioned this earlier as well, but the experience is really infused with ritual. And in fact, the experience flows towards a culminating ritual, which we call civic confirmation, but which a lot of folks who have been trained in this curriculum call a lot of different things and design in a lot of different ways. But really, this is our proposal that one of the things that can help make young people identify as a citizen, sort of identify as a person who shows up, who cares, who seeks to serve the needs that they can notice, is the idea that we need to celebrate that commitment to showing up in those ways. And so this is really a culminating ceremony that is a big part of this curriculum that we believe helps young people to sort of step into a role in their community that they maybe haven't been asked so directly to play in the past. Or maybe they have been asked to play this role, and this is really a way to recognize them for being willing to step into that commitment. And as I said, it's based on sort of the idea of a rite of passage, but you can also think about it as sort of like a civic bar mitzvah, right? Like how do we offer young people who maybe don't have a strong religious affiliation, or maybe who do but are thinking about that as really separate from their everyday life? How do we help those young people have an important rite of passage experience at this phase in their life that helps them to see themselves as a part of the future? Great. I'm going to pause there and maybe give us a little chance to wiggle around, to take a stretch break, to if you need to get a water or whatever you need. But also, if anyone has any questions before we dive into practice, I'd be super happy to take a pause and answer questions or clarify anything that we've gone over so far. Happy to see questions come into the chat, or if you want to come off mute. Okay. Yeah, an example of a civic rite of passage. Totally. So I'll just go back to that slide. So we, as part of the curriculum, we walk through like, how could you design this ceremony with your students in mind? So we ask a lot of different questions. There's like a whole set of questions that help facilitators of Citizen Redefined design the confirmation ceremony with their students. But there's a great example. Actually, we just published a blog post from one of our past trainees, Emma Cartwright, on our website, which I can send out as follow-up. But Emma was working at Central Piedmont Community College in North Carolina, and she led Citizen Redefined as a week-long leadership intensive in the summer that was open to anyone from the community college campus. I think she actually did it 3 weeks in a row with groups of about 25 students. So she served a ton of students in that time, and they did, in the morning, they did lessons from Citizen Redefined, and in the afternoon, they did service projects. So sorry, that's all just context to get to the answer to your question. But what she did at the end was basically like, you could think about it as like I think for hers felt really like almost like a graduation ceremony. But she had each of the students pick out a song that they wanted to have for their walk-on music. And so she would call out the person's name and then play their song, and they would get to walk from the audience onto the stage to the song that they picked out that was meaningful to them. And then each of the students gave something that we call in the curriculum a declaration of civic commitment, but basically just a small statement that explains what they've learned or reflected on or realized through doing this skills practice, and how they want to commit to being a powerful, responsible citizen in the future. So for her ceremony, each student came up to the stage and read for a few minutes, or or spoke off the top of their head for a few minutes about why their community matters to them, what they've learned as through Citizen Redefined, and what they want to commit to moving into the future. She also had, like, she herself did gave some remarks talking about these particular students, and she had co-facilitators leading, like doing a reading of a poem that was important to set the tone of the event. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, and we provide a lot of sort of pick and choose sort of options in the curriculum. But does that help give a little bit more shape to that? Cool. Awesome. Okay, so what we want to do today is give you a little taste of some of the material that's in the curriculum. This is really, we've chosen some activities that are going to feel really similar to how we would lead them in person, so that you can also see what the training experience would be like if that's something that we end up exploring together. And hopefully also these are things that you can literally take and use. If they're helpful to you, we'll make sure that you have all the resources for these particular activities that we get to experience today. And I'll shut up. Davis, do you want to talk about this?
Yes, awesome. So as Zoe was speaking to earlier, the first phase is isolation, which is like separation from the culture that we have been in, the ways that we have been navigating civic stuff in our past, for lack of a better word. And so phase one is to really start with yourself. And we start with that with deep listening. So can you go next? Today we're going to be exploring and listening and what it is like to be heard in our session today. And so maybe somebody can pop off mute real quick and read this out loud.
Can. Sitting with other people's stories in order to understand their perspective, getting curious about other worldviews and your own, suspending judgment, and being willing to receive new information.
Thank you, Abby. I appreciate that. We like to give a what is this called? Description. There we go. Of what each thing is before we go into it. So we have similar language to talk about what it even means to be in deep listening. And we do that because we want to have the same vocabulary, and also because a lot of people have different ideas of what does it even mean or look like to do deep listening. And so what we're going to be doing this time, in a moment, but not yet, we're going to go through another exercise to give us some material to do this deep listening with. But we're going to be practicing what is it like to listen deeply, and what is it like to share about myself in a way that is maybe only drawn out when people are actually listening with their full bodies and full ears and not responding. And so that practice is a thing that then we can take and use in our daily lives to really nurture and support deep conversation about ourselves and our identities and our thoughts of civics, and also in relationship to other people. And so that's kind of why we do this piece. Zoe, do you wanna pop in with the next?
Yeah, awesome. So we're gonna start off with a reflection exercise that is sort of the foundation of a lot of the things that we end up moving throughout the curriculum. And this is a version of an identity map that we're using to help young people identify the identities that they project out into the world, the influences, the communities that have an impact on how they understand themselves and the world around them, and the values that they have cultivated so far. And I'm actually going to invite everybody to work on an identity map. We'll take about 10 minutes to move through this exercise. I'm going to put this link into the chat. And this link, you shouldn't need an account to access it. This link will take you to a Canva file, but you should be able to open it up just straight in your browser. And I put like 30 copies of this in there. Thanks so much for being here. I put like 30 copies of this in here. So you just want to try to grab one that no one else is using. There's plenty for this size of a group. And once you've got that opened up in your browser, you picked one page that you don't think anyone else is working on, just click that box that says you and delete you and type in your name. And so we'll start just by setting that up. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. But if anyone is having a hard time accessing that Canva file, let me know and I can share my screen again. It's also like, listen, y'all, it's not that complicated of a worksheet. You could just draw it on a piece of paper if that's your preference. It's totally fine. But we'll see if we can get in here. Awesome. Cool. I see some people working. I see Evan. Good. Yep. David, awesome. Ruby, I see in there. Abby, thank you. Kim, awesome. Cool. Okay, cool. So yeah, like I said, either you can grab one of these pages and work from that, or if you'd rather just draw this out on a piece of paper and do it with your hand, that is another great way to do it. It's pretty simple. The color coding is completely arbitrary and not necessary. If you just have a pen, that's absolutely okay. Okay, so we'll just move through this together, but you can feel free. The directions are there. So if you get a little ahead, that's totally fine. But we'll start with the blue squares. And I'll work on page 1 as an example. So if you're feeling confused, you can pop back up to page 1 and see what I'm up to. So you'll take on the blue squares, you're going to write down words or ideas that represent the core parts of you. So you might think about things like your age. I might put in millennial. I feel like that carries both some pride and also some, connotations. You might put in your gender, you might put in where your family is from or your racial identity. You might put in your cultural background, your abilities or disabilities. You might put in your economic class, your religious identity. So you'll just come around to any of these blue squares that say identity and replace the word identity with some things that feel like important aspects of yourself. And you'll notice that these arrows, these identity arrows, radiate out from the center. So these are sort of the things that you're bringing when you move through the world. What do you feel like are those most important pieces of you that you're radiating out into the world around you? Let's see. I'll just take a few moments to do that. And it is the case that everybody can see what you're working on, so you can feel free to like sort of tune what you want to share today to this group. And typically we do this on a piece of paper where it's not so public, but this was like sort of the quickest, fastest way I felt like I could get to this without needing people to have like a login or whatever. So awesome. Great. And if you don't have one for every single spot, that's totally fine. Cool. And you can totally keep continuing working on that, but then we'll move over to the community section, these yellow spaces that have some influence towards you, right? These arrows are moving in towards the center. So these are words, ideas, or names, even names of specific people that represent your network of connections and relationships. So how do you want to represent the ecosystem you're a part of? So you might think about things like family or friends or mentors. There might be some overlap, right? There might be some parts of your identity where you feel like that's a piece of me and it's also a community I'm a part of. These might be things like schools or medical systems that have a big influence on you, things that you may or may not interact with directly. Maybe your geography belongs here. So you can just put some things in the yellow spaces. Yeah, awesome. I see people getting in there. That's great. Awesome. And maybe take about 1 more minute, and if you've got some blank spots and you can think of something that wants to belong there, you can fill it in. And once you get maybe most of your spaces filled in, just take a moment to sort of zoom out and look at the picture that you've made so far. Like how do you notice the intersections between some of your identities and the communities you're a part of? Or what are the gaps? What are the things that it's been hard to put your finger on that you feel like maybe are missing? Just kind of notice what you have gotten the opportunity to represent, how things might combine to give you more information. If you feel like this is a good picture of you, or sort of just like a fast picture of you that you did for a second while you were also checking your email or wherever you're at today, is totally fine with me. And then we're going to move into the third step here, which is to make to try to add some values onto the list. And typically when we do this with young people, I would recommend sort of giving them a bank of words of values. I think sometimes it's hard to start from nothing with young people, and that bank of words exists in the curriculum. I didn't pull it into our plan for today, but you can either, if you're a person who thinks about this a lot, who's like, I know my 4 values, it's fun and honesty and commitment and loyalty or whatever. If you're a person who really knows, you can start to populate those in. Might also be helpful to do a bit of a brain dump. So if you want to take a piece of paper or your phone really quick and do a big brainstorm of a lot of things that matter to you, and then sort of zero in on those 4 core things that you want to represent on this map for just today, for just this moment. But let's take about the next 1 minute, however you want to get there, to fill in at least 4 values onto here. Awesome. I see some people already doing that, so that's great. Okay. Does anyone need a little more time? Awesome. Beautiful. So we are going to use this resource as a jumping off point for our listening practice. And if we get to critical thinking, we'll use it a little bit in there as well. But for right now, I'm going to turn it over to Davis to set us up with our next, with our first application for this map that you've made of yourself.
So with this map, I invite you to just like take a second and look over it and notice the things that have shaped you, the different pieces that are your community pieces coming in, and the pieces that are your identity pieces, the pieces that you hold, maybe that are visible and maybe that are not. And notice like we're shaped by the version of the world that we have experienced. All of those pieces of us. How can we help each other to understand more about our worldviews, about the ways that our worldviews overlap and the places that they differ? Empathy is a critical nutrient that helps relationships flourish and strengthens the civic culture work that you each are engaged in. And I'm sure you all know that as teachers and mentors and people who support students. Listening deeply is one of the most basic tools that we have for building empathy. And so that is one of the reasons why we do this deep listening practice, as well as I speak out loud, at least. I often get to uncover different pieces of myself that I didn't even realize were there. So the way that we're going to do this is I have you all in breakout rooms of 2 people. And what you'll do is you're going to decide, you're going to get into the breakout room and you'll just decide who talks first. And they'll share for about 3 minutes uninterrupted, responding to the question, who am I and what do I belong to? Don't worry, you can use this map to figure out how you want to share and what you want to share. The second person is practicing a silent version of listening. This is not listening that you would do every single day, right? This is not what we're asking you to do. This is not what, listening is normally. But the idea is, what does it look like and feel like for us to sit and listen with our full bodies and full hearts without emoting or responding? And so the other person can really have the space to share what they want to share and go where they want to go without our bias or things to kind of maneuver them. And so that'll happen for 3 minutes. And then after 3 minutes is done, the listener is going to have some time to reflect, like a water glass, or like a reflection, like a mirror. There we go, water glass, mirror. So that is maybe saying some of the similar words that this first person said. Maybe it's kind of pulling things together that this first person said, but just reflecting, not giving your own opinion, reflecting what you've heard, and summarizing. And that is meant to be like, okay, when somebody else tells me something or reflects something to me, I often hear more what I'm saying. And so that is kind of what this practice is meant to be. And then you're going to switch and repeat. So the listener is going to be the speaker for 3 minutes, and then the first speaker will reflect for a minute. And you all can keep time in your groups. It looks like we had one person just pop out, so we're going to have one group of 3. We're going to give you about, oh no, that's actually fine. We have all groups of 2. So we'll give you about 10 minutes to do this whole exercise. And that's all I got. Is there any questions, comments, concerns, and needs for this before I push you out into breakout rooms? Oh no, Evan. Okay, goodbye. I'll put, we will have one group of 3. Great. Okay, I'll also push out notifications and reminders of when to switch. The group of 3 maybe have 2 minutes to talk and then 30 seconds to a minute to reflect. Does that make sense? And so we can all do it in 10 minutes. All right. Okay, see you all in 10 minutes. Bye. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Got a slow trickle in as people spend the last of their 60 seconds wrapping up and chatting. I always find that I get brought back in the middle of a sentence. So I'm glad that they are using their time.
I just want to say that I had to travel south from Vermont this weekend, and there was actually sunshine out. And so being on Zoom, I can see the sunburn I got, and I look like this bright red pumpkin, and it's so mortifying. Like, there we go. You know, the silent little things that buzz in your head. And I'm like, oh my God, I look like a pumpkin. So anyway, but it was nice to get sun.
That's awesome. Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. I hope that was powerful, that it supported you in really thinking about who are you and like what is your civic identity and what is your identity in general outside of what it means to be in civics and who is attracting you, and maybe it helped you have some deeper relationships with some people you haven't talked to as much. So I hope that all that was true. And I'd like to offer some reflection questions that we're not necessarily going to talk about, but in group with students, these would be some good thoughts, some good questions to talk about. And some of those were like, just think back, like, what was it like to have to talk about yourself uninterrupted for 3 minutes or so? How did that feel in your body? What was it like being a type of listener that didn't respond? Was that really difficult? Was that easy? That didn't interject. And then what was it like to spend that time reflecting, like have a real solid time to reflect back? What did it feel like to reflect? Is that something that feels easeful to you? What would you adjust or try differently next time? We practiced a very specific way of listening and speaking. And so what are some ways of listening and thinking that we can experience and also gift? Because listening, deep listening is often a gift. So how do we do that in our own lives? What's the impact of that? And what can we look out for as a listener that can help us track what is most meaningful to the person speaking? These are all kind of percolating questions that I invite you to just think about and hold on to and use if you do end up using this activity. Because why we listen impacts how we listen. We work with this organization called Resetting the Table. And it's an organization that teaches people how to have courageous conversations across lines of difference. A big part of this is helping folks learn to practice listening as a follower rather than a leader. Say that again, listening as a follower. It's a different kind of orientation to listening than I had ever heard before thinking about resetting the table. What do people do when they're listening to lead? Or how might they behave? And what do people do when they listen to follow? And think about that in your brain for a second. For us, and how we think about it, is listening to lead is like being like, oh, Zoe, you live in Florida, which she doesn't. Oh, I love Florida. Like I went and had key lime pie, and taking her and leading kind of the conversation into something that I'm interested about. Listening to follow is like, oh, you live in Florida. Well, tell me about that. Like, I want to have opening kind of questions and listen to you to see where you end up going and what seems the most important to you. Following as a listener involves listening for signposts of meaning. So these are like clues or phrases or words, nonverbal things, because 70% of our communication is nonverbal or more. That indicate what especially is meaningful to the speaker, and then asking questions to see what most matters to them. So some of these might be emotions, like if someone's expressing a lot of like sadness or excitement or something, statements of identity, like I am an Indigenous person, metaphors, poetic language. So the water rushed like, I don't even know, I can't right now, but like metaphors, energy and body language. So like right now I'm being exuberant and energetic, but maybe I would be less energetic if I was talking about something else. So noticing those things. Empathetic language. So like, I always do this, or I never do this. Like something that like is like really hitting home. Like I want to tell you this. Repeated words or phrases. I feel like that's easy to understand. Hypotheticals, like what if XYZ happened? And then ambiguity, uncertainty, or confusion, like pausing and being like, well, you know, I'm not quite sure. And there's more, right? And there's normally like things that we can do to, there's a lot more things that we can do within these, or I could have said as hypotheticals of all of these that would also be signposts of meaning. So I invite you to like think about those. Normally what we would do is we would go into a second listening practice with these identities and these thoughts of what signposts of meaning are, and during the time, instead of being completely silent, we would reflect back to the speaker about what seems like the things that they seem the most interested in, or the things that they are really prioritizing. And so we can practice listening to follow. But at this moment, because we have a little less time, we're gonna move forward into a taste of how we explore listening or critical thinking. And Zoe will pop into that. But this right here, what Zoe is showing is that second listening practice.
Okay. For some reason, my mouse has like disappeared to me. Let me see if I can get it. 1 second. I'm like, I can't click this because I can't see my little guy. Okay, 1 sec. Are you all still seeing my screen?
Mm-hmm. And your little guy is on the left. So if you go to the right, yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. I can see it there, but it's like not. Okay, well, anyway, here we are. It's working here. It's just not it's not working on my screen, but I see it working here, so that's fine. Okay, so one of the things that Kim shared with us as we were preparing for this session would be that it would be really great to give you all as much of a taste of the different aspects of the curriculum as we can. And we want to stay in this section of separating ourselves, this section of like starting with yourself. We want to try to, as we move into the last chunk of our time here together, give a little bit of a taste of the next civic skill that we would explore together, both in training and with young people, which is critical thinking. And once again, I'll ask someone as we jump in here to just come off mute and read aloud our grounding, our framing, our definition of critical thinking, what we mean when we say we're going to talk about this for the next 20 minutes.
I can read it. Sharpening the ability to seek, absorb, and process information about important issues, to understand your own filters and form nuanced perspectives.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think critical thinking sometimes, even for me, gets really wrapped up in media literacy. And I think media literacy is super important, and it's not totally what we're going to talk about as we go through. We're really going to think about like, how does our brain interact with information, and what are the things from that starburst map you made that have an impact on how you interact with information? How does knowing more about your own mind help you to engage with people who think something differently than you? So, okay, I am going to stop sharing for a moment and try to redo it so that I can have everything that I need. Thank you for your patience. I just really feel like, here's what we can do while I'm resetting this. I'm going to invite everyone to pop into Canva one more time. This link that I just sent you in the chat is intentionally very spread out. So if you're not used to using Canva, in your bottom right, you've got a slider bar that will zoom you out. If you zoom out to about 3%, you can see everything that's on here. You can't read it, obviously. So I'm going to suggest that you zoom into maybe about 20 or 30%. And just zoom around here and see some of the things that you notice. You can zoom as much in or out as you want, but just sort of explore with your cursor around this whiteboard the same way that you might like wander around a museum. Notice the pieces of information that are represented here. And you can take the approach of trying to look at everything. You can take the approach of looking at one thing and just really sticking with it. But I want you to notice what are your reactions when you come across a piece of information? Do you have strong thoughts? Do you have strong feelings? Do you have strong sensations? And try to think about what might be causing any of those strong reactions. And I will try to get my situation
I'm not seeing the link. Is it in the chat?
Oh yeah, in the chat. So you can just click. Thanks. Davis just put in the link in sort of a better way than what I did, which is why I need her in my life. Awesome. So just take a couple of minutes to look around in there, primarily noticing your reactions to anything, if you have some. Okay. So we think about this museum kind of like maybe watching the news or like spending time in your feeds, your various feeds, right? Whether that's social media or online or listening to the radio or wherever you tend to interact with information, either actively or passively on a regular basis. So you might think now, did you see anything here that made you feel like, oh yeah, that's a source that I would trust? Or did you see something here that really caused you to be like, ugh, no, that is not for me. Like, I do not want to interact with that piece of information. And what we want to do is get a little curious about where those reactions come from, what causes us to feel strongly, and with deep acknowledgement that some of that is like awareness of how to be a cognizant consumer of information, and also some of that is based on our experiences and our context. Yeah, and Davis put in the chat, these are not pieces that I have chosen based on my personal or our organizational agreement with them. It's just sort of a mix of things to try to get us thinking about this idea. Okay, we're gonna try an experiment in so many ways, which is that I'm gonna try to get my screen back working and make sure I'm sharing sound. Okay. So we're going to share an experiment to help keep thinking about this idea of like how do our habits around information form? How does our brain work when we're interacting with ideas? Okay, so I'm going to play a piece of music. This is just a test. You don't need to do anything. Let's see if we can hear it. Thumbs up if you heard that. Yeah. Okay. So this is an experiment. This is an activity that's meant to help us think about how we receive facts. Okay. Everyone, I'm playing the same file. We're all hearing the same sound. So I'm going to play it one more time, and I want you to actively try to decide if you think so. The sound file is 2 tones. And I want you to try to decide if you think those tones are going up in pitch or if you think they're going down in pitch. So if you think about the piano, like, do you think those 2 tones are going up the piano or going down the piano? Are they getting higher or getting lower? Does that sort of decision-making structure make sense? Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, I'm gonna play it again. If you think it's going higher, put your hand on your heart. Actually, wait. If you think it's going higher, put your hand on your head. If you think it's going lower, put your hand on your heart. That's easier to remember because head is higher than heart. Okay. Higher, lower. Let's close our eyes for fun. Close your eyes. Okay, here we go. Keep your eyes closed. If you think it's going higher, put your hand on your head. If you think it's going lower, put your hand on your heart. Do you want me to play it one more time? I'm not seeing everybody's. Play it one more time. Okay, here we go. Okay. Okay, now open your eyes and maybe take a look at the other screens to notice that we're mostly hand on our head group, but we've got some heart folks and we've got some people who are like, I don't know, don't care, can't decide. One of these. Abby is sort of a both and type here. So the reality of the situation is that these two tones are each something that's called a shepherd tone, which means that it's every single note and one note in every single octave. So I don't actually know exactly what note these two tones are, but you could say, for example, it's all the C notes on the piano, and then it's all the A notes on the piano, right? So it is true that the sound is both going up in pitch and going down in pitch. Both those things are true. Sometimes when we do this, the whole group agrees, and it's like, doesn't really prove the point, right? Sometimes when we do this, there's a big difference in what people think. There's like half the group is like, it's definitely going up, and half the group is like, it's definitely going down. And what's really interesting about this, this experiment comes from actually a performance piece that was made by David Byrne, trying to help us understand more about how our mind works. The social scientist Talia Wheatley has a great piece about helping us to understand what's going on here. She says that what's the most interesting thing about this, and they've done this with tons of people over time, lots of clinical experiments with this type of exercise. The most interesting thing is that whether you think it's going up or down is not random. It's based on your experience. So people who like the same type of music tend to hear it in a similar way. Or people who live in the same geographical area tend to hear it in a similar way. Our brains don't really like ambiguity. We want answers to things. And so your experiences are tuning your brain to be able to understand the world with clarity. Now, I'm curious, Abby, I don't know if you feel like coming off mute to talk to us a little bit about where you were at. Like, what were you hearing? What was making you sort of bring both of these options into your response?
So I'm a musician. I've been playing music since I was very small. And so when you played it a couple times, I knew the way I would have conceptualized it is the idea of overtones. So when you make certain when you play certain notes, when the acoustics are just correct, or the technique is just correct, or both, you can, on certain instruments, play one note but hear several, and there's a series of overtones. So that was what I kind of hypothesized was happening. So I knew what you were asking and why you were asking, but also because I tend to be a literal person, I was like, well, it's both. And I know that it's both. So I'm going to say that it's both. But also, we're trying to, like, it's the same idea that, you can hand one person a news article and another person a news article, and they can take two completely different things from it, just entirely based on their own bias and where they come from in life.
Totally. And actually, I think the fact that you were willing to say, I know that it's both, and so I'm going to respond that it's both, is like a very important demonstration of the idea here, right? Because it's not that you guessed that it was both or like didn't care about the structure of the question. It's that you have this very specific experience in your life that led you to interpret this sound in a really specific way with really specific clarity, right? It's like based on your experience as a musician that you were able to say it's both, and I know that it's both. Someone else might have thought, I feel like it's both, but I don't really know why, so I'm just gonna like choose the thing that seems right to me. Or maybe if we had our eyes open and someone was like, I feel like it's both, but everyone else has their hand on their head, so maybe I'll just think it's this for right now, right? So I think this idea that you had this both deep experience that helped you to understand what was going on more than maybe even I do, to be honest, based on your response, right? And also that you were willing to say, I'm going to choose I'm going to reject the binary here because I actually have more information, I think is like a really beautiful expression of what we're trying to explore in this moment. So thanks so much for bringing that into the mix. I want to just offer, I want to offer some reflection questions, and then I want to offer a tool before we close our time out here. So this is a quote from Bell Hooks, and I'll just say that one of the things that is really important to us about the Citizen Redefined curriculum is this idea that there have been so many civic leaders and guides throughout history, throughout the history of our country and throughout the history of humans. And we really want the curriculum to be infused with a sense of guidance from a very wide variety of folks. So there is a lot of both essential and supplemental text from a very wide variety of civic leaders across sectors and history. But this quote from Bell Hooks, I feel like really encapsulates what we're trying to talk about when we talk about critical thinking, which is this idea that it is both seeing things from other perspectives and also envisioning the consequences of our own position. So trying to figure out what is at stake because of what I believe, or what is possible because of what I believe. And how can I be more in conversation with my own thoughts and opinions as I move through the world and bump up against other people's thoughts and opinions? Not to say that we're releasing our thoughts and opinions, right? A lot of us have a lot of really good opinions based on our experiences, right? Like Abby was correct. It's not so that she needs to like let it go, dude. It's like they knew what they were talking about. This is sort of the heartbeat of this critical thinking session, which does take a lot more time. I'm just going to go to the reflection questions and then to the tool. So this is just one of the ways that we would bring the identity map back in here, is thinking about, you know, if we want to be able to envision the likely consequences of our position, we have to think about where our opinions come from. So taking a look at your identity map, either literally now or figuratively, imagining how your communities and your identities influence your priorities. What do you tend to pay a lot of attention to, and what do you tend to dismiss? Is that sort of attention budget, the way that you manage your attention, based on your past? Is it based on the things you really care about? Is it based on your values? And trying to think about, before we interact with a news article or have a discussion with someone who has a different opinion than us, understanding what are the lenses that we're carrying around with us every day. What is easy for us to look at and talk about? What's harder to consider? And then what we use as a tool, and what we would typically do, is like go back into the museum, which is usually posted all around the room, with this tool in mind, which is to say, how can we interact with the information that we're being honestly bombarded with all day long, with a little bit more awareness of how we are in the mix. So we use this recipe for critical thinking, and we ask people to reflect on, we ask young people to reflect on when they're interacting with new information or trying to decide what are the facts, starting with the ingredients. What are your instincts about what you're reading? How does your identity play a role in how you're understanding the piece of information or the opinion that you're interacting with? How do your values interact? Are you interacting with something that is really going against your values or is really bolstering your values? How does that impact how you understand what you're interacting with? What do you know, right? What is the expertise that you're bringing into the mix that you can rely on? And what are the gaps in your own knowledge? So, I mean, this is one that I think about constantly when I'm reading the news, is I have to be like, I need to stop and acknowledge all of the things here that I know 10% about, but I actually don't know as much as I need to know in order to really process this information. And I think knowledge is not only about taking personal responsibility for knowing everything, but it's about understanding where you can go to find out more, or who are the types of people who have demonstrated capacity to be trusted around that subject. And then also empathy. How is your empathy for the people super close to the issue, or for the person expressing their opinion, being activated? So are you feeling, what are your feelings about the situation? What experiences have you had or have you not had that help you to understand where this opinion is coming from? And then once you sort of do this reflection of self, then we get into sort of reflecting, critical lens, dissecting the information itself. So what are the facts that are being presented? How can we know that they're true? Whose voices are being represented? Whose voices are being left out? What are the biases in the mix? And it's important to us to talk about the fact that biases are not always bad, right? Everybody has biases, and usually those biases are designed to help us protect the things that we care about most. And often they're also harmful. But trying to figure out, like, what are the biases that are in the mix of the thing we're interacting with? Looking out for feeling and emotion, similar to the signposts of meaning. How is emotion playing a role in the way that information is being presented or received? And then thinking about history. What is the context of the situation? What is a longer history that maybe isn't getting acknowledged? What do we know about how things have evolved that is impacting how things are or seem in this moment? So this is a tool that there's a lot more information about in the curriculum overall, but really thinking about, like, the bridge from listening deeply, being open to receive, and then moving into critical thinking. How do we grapple with and evaluate information that we're coming into contact with, whether that's through conversation or online or in life? So I said I wasn't going to rush. I did rush a little bit through that, but I'm wondering, Davis is going to bring us to a close, but are there any questions before we get into a couple of closing thoughts and follow-up?
This is a question, not necessarily about the curriculum necessarily, but I think the organization and the process. Do y'all have folks on your team who are people with disabilities, particularly people with non-visible disabilities, like autism, learning disabilities, things like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes is the answer to your question. Is there,
okay.
Do you want me to talk about more?
Just the reason I ask is one of the things that I think about a lot when designing any kind of curriculum is the overall accessibility of the material, and making sure that if the source material is, it's very, hold on, let me put my thoughts together quickly before it's very cool and interesting, and I like it a lot. And I also wonder if folks who are maybe more literal thinkers, or folks whose vocabulary is not as vast, would be able to benefit. So I wonder if there are plans or ideas around versions that are more plain language, less metaphorical, and just for increased access.
Totally. Yeah, I think that is a really crucial question in our design process right now. And I think to be totally transparent, like I mentioned at the beginning, that one of the things we're really excited about is customizing, sort of making the adjustments that we can make on our end for each individual learning community that we bring the curriculum to. And I think the question you're asking is one that we're asking ourselves quite often. I think that, or I shouldn't say often, because that's not really what I want to say. What I want to say is like deeply. And I think that both there have been a lot of efforts on our part to try to ground the material in more literal examples, more plain language discussion. I also think that it's a growth area for us. And so I think we're really excited about working with partners who have that super at the front of their mind, because then that gives us the opportunity to say like, okay, is this it? Okay, is this it? But I really appreciate you for bringing that into the mix. And I do think that it's an area for us that we're actively trying to grow towards having more.
Very cool.
I think too, something that with this curriculum, you know, we have given you a barrage of information today, and a lot of like us speaking and a lot of didactic, conversational, right? This is very, this was kind of lecture-y and awesome and lecture-y. And this is not how we often present the material. Material has a lot of activities and a lot of discussion and a lot of time for questions and reading and time to like create artwork together and collages. And like, we have so many different pieces in there that we weren't able to show today because just of the nature of a Zoom lecture. And so, yes, this is something that we're actively asking and holding a deep question about. And it's something that we weren't able to show you all the pieces that we try to bring in to support everybody's understanding and awareness. You know,
I hope you know that I'm not attempting to be critical in any way.
No.
Just like
we want that is what we want. We want criticism and support, right? And I'm just like, there's also these pieces that we weren't able to show you.
well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. And we got 1 minute left, but I want to just leave us with a little thought. We're here to discuss what it means to be a citizen without the formal label or the paperwork, but with someone with their feet on the earth of the land that you are on, rooted, with roots that maybe reach out and find others people's roots that are rooted, who finds the trees and the plants and where the water runs in the place that you're at, whose roots look deeper and dig further into the soil of that place, who pauses to take in the history of that space. Being a citizen, like what we're talking about, isn't just about existing, it's about actively nourishing the ecosystems of our communities. It's about leaning in and contributing our unique talents. And we hope to do that and co-create with you all what it means to be a citizen in the places and rooted in where you're at. Building the America that we all envision, that one that's maybe never existed, but might just be possible with that leaning in, with that civic faith. One that includes all of our emotions, our sadness, our frustration, our love, our desire, our anger, because to feel the disappointment of America is to give hope that maybe someday it will move towards health, towards an America that acts as if we're all better off when we're all better off. And if we detach, we resign America to never grow into that loving and vibrant ecosystem it could be. We let the trees stay first growth with no tending. And that's why we're here. That's why we need these civic rites of passage for our young people into their civic identities, to go from glassy-eyed and overwhelmed, which makes sense, to maybe more clear-eyed, fully emoting people who are ready to step into the ecosystem of our democracy with service and support. And to do this, we need you. We need mentors like you, lifting up and stirring their unique gifts, and to support them in understanding that they have immense power and strength within them that nobody can take away. And we need that. to move into second and third and seventh growth force in America. It is imperative to lift up our young people to the center of our village and remind them that they are deeply loved and needed and powerful and kind and wonderful, unique beings with their specific seeing of what the world is, and that what they notice will be different from anyone else. Where their attention goes, their energy can flow and create and nourish more of a positive and supportive America to them and us and to everybody. And maybe, just maybe, that will support making America the America that it has never been, but I hope that it soon will be. And I really hope that this was helpful to you all and that we can continue leaning in and co-creating this. Because we don't know, I don't know what America should look like, but I hope that we can all co-create what does it mean to be a citizen for ourselves and step into that world. And so our invitation is to just stay in touch with us, to please share reflections and feedback, and maybe to stay tuned if you're interested for more opportunities to engage. And I'll pass it over to Kim.
Just want to say a huge thank you to Zoe and to Davis for taking the time to come have this conversation with us all, for all the work that goes into preparing an agenda and facilitating. So huge thank you to both of you for all your investment and willingness to launch this conversation. And what we see is just the beginning of this conversation. And to all of you for hanging in there for the last 2 hours and juggling the young people outside your door and everything else that we know that's going on. So super appreciate all of you. Shout out to Ruby and Abby had to leave, but the Circle team for taking the time to also join and be part of this conversation. Because this is all interconnected. So thank you. And just like both Zoe and Davis said, we really want your feedback because we want to make this work in this particular project in collaboration work for all of you. And so we will come back, Kathy and I will come back because we know all of you that are on the call right now. So we will come back to all of you, but anyone else that will be listening in on the session, the recorded session, email us, email all of us, email Kathy or I, or pick up the phone and give a call, and we will also follow up. So our next session will be in June, so stay tuned. And in the meantime, if you have, I think you know this, but if you have a topic or that is related to this, that is a continuation or completely different, you have an issue, a request for to use this this space in this community for peer consultancy and to get feedback, any and all of it is welcome. So most of all, thanks for the amazing work that you do. Thanks for the love that you shower on all our young people. And that's it. And thank you, Davis. Thank you, Zoe.
Thanks so much, everybody.